Hello, everyone. This is Independent Conservative. I am Ryan Bowling. Thank you all for joining me. So you all know about Tim Waltz being the VP pick by Kamala Harris as extremely radical. I don't need to go over the details of that. You know that this is a situation. I knew very little about this man, and I knew very little about. I knew very little about what was it, Josh Shapiro, the other guy who was a possible VP pick, but he was passed over because he's Jewish, and the Democrats did not want to offend the Hamas young people's Hamas party for just a lot of ridiculous stuff, right? So they picked this guy, Tim Waltz, the governor of Minnesota, who was so radical and so to the left that it was like, according to some sources, a gift to the Trump camp. Like, oh, thank you for giving us this gift, because if we can convince American people and tell American people just how far left this man is, it would be an easy win, basically. So I have read, and so I started doing a little research on this guy, reading up on him, hearing from different perspectives, and looking at exactly what his policies were. And yeah, this man is like, he's like way to the left. He's so far to the left that if you look to the left, God dog, you can't find him. I mean, he's so far to the left. Why would anyone want to support him? Why would anyone want to support Kamala Harris? Now, let's be realistic. Vice presidents have become, over the years, have become more prominent, but in the early history of the role of the vice president, particularly in the early history of America, vice presidents weren't all that prevalent. They were kind of like nonchalant to the side. They were like to hurrah, hurrah, hurrah for the president. They were the cheerleaders for the president. That's basically it. But down through the decades, vice presidents have been given a lot more authority and prestige. Okay, there's just one step away from being the president. We found that out when President Joe Biden gave Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, the position of the border czar. Yes, she was given that position. I'm not going to argue with people over that. That's what she was. She was a total, absolute, dismal failure in that, okay? What I want to talk about, so having said all of that, what I want to talk about in this video is a Breitbart News article that I'm going to read to you guys. That has some very interesting and twisted information in it. It's in reference to Tim Walz's idea of using taxpayer money to finance and fund, rather, boys' bathrooms with tampons. Now, we've heard this said before, but yeah, this is what he did. And there was some kind of meme that was created that kind of mocked it a little bit, mocked this a little bit. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to get right into this article, and I'm going to give you guys my opinion on what I think this really all comes down to. Because at the end of the day, this really comes down to common sense. Because no one with common sense would vote for these individuals. But will they? So when I get through reading this article and I give you my commentary, I'm going to read you guys some quotes from a book that I purchased some years ago. And I think you will find it very, very interesting how these quotes from these individuals who existed decades ago, excuse me, a lot of what they're talking about is relevant today. It's going on today. So let's get right into this article. Yeah, this is crazy. This is crazy, absolutely crazy. But this is what radicals are. This is what communists are. This is what Marxists do. Democrats are sending in the big guns, most notably failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton to whitewash Governor Tim Walz's radical record of using taxpayer dollars to ensure every male student in his state has access to more tampons than he could ever use. It's so silly. You would think that, nothing, let's go on. The former Secretary of State turned motivational speaker praised Waltz for his, quote, compassionate and common sense policy, okay, of stocking boys' schools' bathrooms with menstrual products in a clear deflection of Republican attacks. Okay, says, and apparently she says, how nice of the Trump camp to help publicize Governor Tim Walz's compassionate and common sense policy of providing free menstrual products to students in Minnesota public schools. Let's do this everywhere, Clinton posted on Facebook, sharing a, quote, tampon Tim meme featuring Walt's face on a tampon box. And it's crazy if you see it. I wish I could show it to you guys. I wish I had, though. the software for that. Somebody, by the way, if you bother to watch this video, please show me how to do this here in the comment check. How to be able to show you guys these images, to try to beef this up a little bit. But anyway, there's a picture on Facebook in her Facebook page of a tampon box. The word tampon Tim is plastered across tampon upon Tim's area up at this part to his throat. His face is shown, but you can't see this area, and it says tampon Tim. I mean, oh boy, oh boy. Anyway, the meme was originally posted by Shai Raki, whatever, operator of the well-known conservative libs of TikTok social media accounts. Yet Clinton's use of the benign students appears to intentionally distract from the issue under scrutiny. Walt's woke and wasteful use of taxpayer dollars to provide tampons to young boys who, of course, do not menstruate and have no productive use for tampons. And of course they don't. I mean, why would anyone argue that? That's common sense, But we're going to get into what I personally believe is going on right now with the whole idea of common sense. Republicans have savaged Waltz for caving to the woke's insistence that, quote, not all students who menstruate are female. As Minnesota State Representative Sandra Feist, oh God, these names. Why can't everybody just have regular names like Ryan Bowling? Okay, God, everybody can pronounce Ryan Bowling, but this Sandra Fiat, what the heck, man? Anyway, articulated when advocating for the bill that Waltz signed to require tampon dispensers in boys' bathrooms in schools. Why would somebody do that? Why would you do that? Why would you take taxpayer money to do that? Boys don't menstruate. Why would you do that? What sense does that make unless there's an agenda, a sick, twisted, evil agenda? Anyway, let's go on. Many Republicans, including presidential nominee former President Donald Trump, have rejoiced at Democrat presidential nominee Vice President Kamala Harris' choice of the ultra-progressive Waltz as her running mate. The governor and former congressman's radical record, which concludes praise for squad member Representative Omar, who has a long history of anti-Semitic positions, has proved a gold mine for Republican attacks in the first 24 hours since his nomination was announced. End of article. Yeah, you could say that it's a gold mine. I agree. It would be a gold mine. But this inevitably leads to the question of trying to convince the American people, maybe those in the middle, the moderates, hey man, this is not the way to go. You don't want to vote for Kamala Harris. You don't want to support. This is way, way to the left. This is insane. None of this makes sense whatsoever. It's not true. It's a lie. It's twisted. Why would you do this? It all comes down to common sense. I was watching one particular YouTube content creator that stated that if you look at and he's absolutely true. He's absolutely right. That if you look at the Republicans and conservatives arguments, and you look at liberals and Democrats arguments on these issues, the Republicans and conservatives are all talking about policies, and how these policies are destroying our country and hurting our country, and how their policies could help the country. And you look at the Democrats and you look at the liberals, and they're all talking about emotion. When it comes down to reasons for voting for Kamala Harris, it's all about her being a woman of color. It's all about her being the first woman. Has nothing to do with policies. They never mention policies, which is why many argue, why hasn't Kamala Harris been interviewed yet? Why isn't there any real interviews? She seems to be running away from people who want to interview her on very important questions like the border and all the rest of this stuff going on. Why is she avoiding these interviewers and these prevalent questions that she needs to be asked? What's going on? This is one of the arguments. Here's the deal. It's going to come down to common sense between us, because the way I see it is not difficult between the two. What Kamala Harris and I mean, her picking this man is clearly insane. Okay, I can understand why she did it. She don't want to offend Hamas or whatever, man. Whatever. It's still stupid. You pick this guy who's basically, in so many ways, he's a professed socialist. Because in a, I think it was a TikTok video or Zoom interview, where he stated one man's, what did he say? Something along the line of socialism. He says one man's hatred of socialism is another man's gift. Socialism is another man's gift, or something like that. But in any way, I don't want to misquote him, but I'm pretty sure some of you may have heard it. But at any rate, he was essentially praising socialism. And he was essentially saying that he's a socialist. That's basically what he was saying, that he's a socialist. You don't want a socialist in office. We already have him with the Democratic Socialists of America, and that's Omar's one of them. What is it? Orkaz, whatever her name is, she's another. They're actual socialists. Socialism is just a step below communism. And usually socialism, when it infiltrates a country and the country becomes socialist, it usually, if it's not stopped, merges into a communist country, and then that's it. But look at Venezuela. Venezuela was obviously a socialist country. When the socialists took over, it was a free market country at one point. And then when the socialists took over, when the new president took over, he turned it into a socialist country. And they called hell. So is that what you want in office? You want that? Well, anyway, let's get down to the nudie swoot of what this is. Like I said, it's supposed, it's clear that this should be a common sense situation now. It's going to be, the American people are going to have to simply use common sense. But the question is, do a lot of Americans have common sense, or do they use it? That's the question. That's the question. Because at work, and I shared this with you guys before, at work, I'm always talking with this guy, this older guy in his 60s, employee, and we always talk about politics. He's a conservative, I'm a conservative. He's Republican, I'm basically Republican when it comes down to voting. I'm going to vote for a decent Republican, okay? Not going to vote for no Democrats, forget it, it's not happening. And we were talking about, just last Monday, we were talking about, well, not last Monday, this Monday just went by, last Monday. We were talking about the issue of Kamala Harris and how far left she is, and we're talking about all these type of things. And the issue of common sense came up. And I mentioned to him, I said, man, look, people just going to have to use common sense. And I remember him saying something to me along the line of, how could anyone vote for this person? How could they say this? I can't remember everything because we talked for so long. It's just so much information. And I said, you know what? They're not going to. They're not going to listen to that because they've been brainwashed. And I remember there was this one lady that sits down on the bench all the time. These people frequent outside front, what is called the front portico of Tower City all the time. They don't do nothing. I don't know if they're retired or they have issues that they can't work, but all they do is come down there, sit in front of Tower City all day and do nothing. Well, anyway, she's sitting there and she's looking at me like she's ready to kill me. She's ready to kill me. And I looked at her across the miles over there and I kept talking. Because my attitude was, I don't care what you think and I don't care what you feel. At the end of the day, what's true is true and what's right is right. So I don't care what you feel. If I'm conservative, you need to open your eyes and see. You need to hear the other side, not just what you're hearing on the mainstream media. They're brainwashing you. So it comes down to common sense. But are people going to actually use common sense? Are they in the frame of mind of using common sense? And I'm going to be honest with you. My argument would be this. I think, unfortunately, a lot of them are not. And let me just read something to you guys. Read you a few quotes here about the mindset of so many Americans right now and how they have been manipulated psychologically to the point where they don't know which way is up, okay, especially when it comes to politics. I think I read some quotes from this book before, but bear with me with this because this book is all tattered. It's called Mass Awakening. Look at this book. Mass Awakening. I bought it in 2015, purchased in 2015. The writer is a man by the name of Paul McGuire. He's a Christian, but he's also a intensive researcher. He's internationally known as a prophecy expert and so forth and commentator. So he wrote this book in 2015, and essentially he quotes He writes, have written the quotes of many individuals who existed decades ago who were all about creating a one world government, one world socialist government, one world communist government. It's incredible. If you read the quotes, it will blow you away. These quotes are real quotes. They direct quotes from the individuals that existed many decades ago. So I'm going to read you guys a couple of quotes here and tie that into what we're seeing today in reference to the mindset of so many Americans. Are they using common sense? Will they be able to use common sense when it comes down to voting? So I want to read to you guys. Here, there was a man by the name of Bertrand Russell. Some of you may or may not have heard of him. Bertrand Russell was a socialist and scientist in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. Okay, Bertrand Russell. He was a socialist, philosopher, intellectual, and I think a scientist. And he wrote a book in the 1950s, I believe, called A Scientific Dictatorship, or something along that line. Scientific Dictatorship, anyway. But I never purchased the book. I never bought the book, but I read quotes from the book. Okay, so I'm just reading you the quotes from the actual book. And this is from page 62 of Russell's book. And this is what Russell said. Also, Bertrand Russell was into mind control. Okay, this is what he says. It is to be expected that advances in physiology and psychology will give governments much more control over individual mentality than they now have, even in totalitarian countries. Now listen to that. It is expected that advances in physiology and psychology will give governments much more control over individual mentality than they now have, even in totalitarian countries. In other words, when you look at what he's saying, in totalitarian countries where they use physical force to control the people, the sciences of physiology and psychology will be used to control the mentalities of people even greater than totalitarian countries that essentially uses physical force to control the people. In other words, you can control the mind. A dictatorship of the mind is what's needed in order to control people. That's basically what he's saying. Now, he's in support of this. He's not prophesying about it and saying, oh, this is what's going to end up happening if we don't get ourselves together. He's in support of this. He supports this kind of control. He goes on to say, he quotes, Finch laid it down that education should aim at destroying free will. Get that now. Education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils have left school, they shall be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. These people literally existed. Not a conspiracy theory, but anyway, it goes on. Now, here's the part that I want you to really listen to. It says, diet, injections, and injunctions will combine. What is diet? Diet obviously is food. What are injections? You know what that is. You know what that is. Stick, stick, stick. Yeah. And injunctions, that's music and movies and so forth, will combine. In other words, what you eat, what the stick, okay, and what you watch and listen to will all be used and combined together. It says, will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, docile and quiet. You know, they don't have any grit. They're docile and quiet. They're not willing to resist what the government is saying. They're not willing to resist it, nor can they discern it, nor can they decipher it, because all of these different elements, according to what he is saying here, this is what I interpret this as, will combine to manipulate and control the mind. Put the mind in a passive state. Okay? Let's read again. That the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Now, here's the part that got me. Even if all are miserable, all will believe themselves happy. Why? Because the government will tell them that they are so. This is page 62 of Bertrand Russell's book. No, that's what it's called. The impact of science in society. That's what it's called. The book is called The Impact of Science in Society. This is page 62 of Bertrand Russell's book. Okay? Now, just keep that in your mind. I'm going to go to another quote here that I think is pretty. And I think I quoted this a while back in another video. This is from a man by the name of Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley was a scientist. He was a socialist, a member of what is called the Fabian's Society of Socialism that was built in the late 1700s in England. Okay, essentially, it's a secret society. And this is what he says. I'm gonna quote some of the words read some of the words of Paul McGuire in his book. He says, for example, Aldous Huxley, a scientist and the author of Brave New World, was given a lecture at the University of Berkeley in March 20, 1962, to a gathering of scientists and neuropsychiatrists. Scientists and neuropsychiatrists, right? And this is what he supposedly said. This is what he said. And I believe he said it. I don't believe it's made up. He says, there will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude. What is pharmacological? Drugs, obviously. This will be a method of making people love their servitude or love their slavery and producing dictatorship without tears. It will be a painless dictatorship, a dictatorship of the mind. He goes on, so to speak, producing a kind of, once again, painless concentration camp for entire societies so that people will, in fact, have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods. And this seems to be the final revolution, which is basically a quiet, soft Marxist revolution. Now, you may be asking, once again, why did I read those two quotes? Because I'm tying those two quotes, and this was decades ago, from individuals that believe in mind control and practice mind control. Bertrand Russell was one of them. Aldous Huxley is another, and there are a few others. This ties in my opinion, to what we see today when it comes to common sense and what is going to basically come to common sense when it comes time to vote. Will the people utilize common sense between Kamala Harris and Trump? It would appear to be apparent which would be the better pick. But if Aldous Huxley and Bertrand Russell was right, it might not happen. It might not happen. And that's what I'm concerned about. That's what I'm concerned about, these injunctions and these injections and all of these different things, and diet and food that we will combine to keep people in a passive state of mind so they won't resist the totalitarian mindset that's being pushed on them. The vehicle by which this is happening, for the most part, is the mainstream media. The mainstream media clearly is complicit with this ideology, this worldview. So once again, it comes down to common sense, but are the people going to use common sense? Are they going to be willing to say, hey, let me break out of what the mainstream media is saying, and let me just try to find out what these alternative news sources are saying about this? Let me just find out from the perspective of a conservative about what they're talking about. I don't know. Because if the government says that you happy and you go, even though they're miserable, the government says you all right, you believe it. Okay? And now, according to Bertrand Russell, and going back to Aldous Huxley, they will have their freedoms taken away from them bit by bit, and they will enjoy it. They will enjoy it. And that's what I see today. I see a lot of people messed up on drugs, on a whole bunch of stuff, and they happy. I see people sitting up halfway, nearly choking off of the cigarettes that they're smoking, and they just keep smoking. But you literally choking to death. Why? Because you love your slavery. You're a slave to the system. You love it even though you're dying. The government comes and says to you, you're good, man. Even though physically and psychologically you're miserable, You have no hope. You have no vision for your life. The government comes up there and says, you are fine. They gaslight you. You're fine. Everything's okay. Woo, woo, woo. Go about your business. Don't fight against anything. The injunctions and diet and injections that's been put in you combined to keep you in a passive, quiet state of mind where you won't push and resist. This is how a lot of people are. And so they choking and dying, literally, but they're still smoking. I've seen people drinking and they choke and literally vomiting on the ground. I know it sounds gross, but that's literally what they're doing. And they keep on drinking. I'll be wanting to kick them in the side of the neck. Don't you see you dying, you idiot? But it is what it is. What it is, because you a slave and they're a slave and they don't even know it. They love their slavery just like Aldous Huxley said they would. I'm just saying. That's what it comes down to in the end of this video. I know it went longer than normal, but I wanted to bring that out. It's going to come down to common sense. But will the people use common sense? I hope so. We will wait till November to see. Because if not, and they vote for Kamala Harris and this Tim Waltz communist nutbag, we better pray and fast like we never prayed and fasted before. If you're an atheist, you probably going to become a Christian real quick. Okay? Because they're going to put us through something. They're going to put us through something if they get in office. I'm just saying. If we already messed up economically now and all the rest, you wait till they get it. If they get in office, you wait and see. You ain't seen nothing yet. But that's what I had to say about it. What do you guys think about this? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe to my channel. God bless you all. See you again.